Alright, let's just do a quick audio test. Can you guys hear me okay? Nice. Okie doke. So, let's do a little bit of housekeeping just before we get into our lesson for today. I did go through and marked all of the phase 1 projects that I could. I think there was a couple that I left just because I had to connect with Jess to ask her some questions. But yeah, so everybody else's are pretty much marked. So if yours is not marked, it will be marked this weekend. It's the only reason that it was not marked was just because I had to connect with Jess. For the most part, everybody did pretty good. I think the biggest piece that was missing from a lot of them was the review. I didn't realize how heavily weighted that review was, but yeah, the review is pretty heavily weighted. The whole idea of a project review, I'm not sure how much Jess actually explained about project reviews with you guys, but the idea of a project review is I want to build a feature. In order to build that feature, I need to explain what I'm going to do with this feature. Once I build it, I'm going to add in the other pieces of information I need to let my stakeholders know about, which is like what challenges I encountered, right? So they can better understand why the project took as long as it did. What features are available, how to use it. That's usually a big one, right? So those are the three that I was looking for. Did you explain how to use it? Did you kind of outline your features? And did you outline your challenges? So that's what I was looking for. And if you missed those pieces, you lost a few marks, and I explained why. But for the actual functionality of the sites, I'd say maybe 95% of you had it working. There's like 5% of you that had ones that were not working so great. And I would provide you a little bit of feedback onto why that was. It looked like most of the issues were with update. That seemed to be the one that kind of stumped a few people. But everything else seemed to work okay. I didn't penalize you if it wasn't live. Some of you didn't have a live project. I did penalize you for missing GitHub though. So if you didn't have GitHub and you hadn't used version control, you did lose the version control marks, which should make sense to you as that was part of the requirement. But otherwise, you didn't lose any marks for it not being live. I don't know if phase 2 requires it to be live. I haven't actually looked at the scope of phase 2 yet. But if it does, just keep that in mind that if it has to be live, it has to be live, right? Because I'm just going to follow what Jess is doing with her outline. Cool. Yeah, any questions about any of that? About the project marks or anything like that, or about the project itself? No? Cool. Alright, so last week, yeah, if you did phase 1 on a live server, well, the idea is that if you did it in phase 1, you're just adding to your project. So, in theory, it should already be on the live server when you do phase 2. Yeah, absolutely, Alex. If we don't cover it, you don't need it. Yeah. Though I think we might be able to. Actually, tonight's lesson I don't think will take all that long. I did the lesson earlier this week. My class on Monday is at the same stage as you guys, and it went super quick. Like, we were done probably in about an hour and 20 minutes, so it went pretty fast. That being said, if we hit the same point, then next week we'll do file uploads for sure, because we'll be able to. We'll have the time to do it. What was I going to say though? Yeah, file uploads. Phase 1, phase 2. Oh, the one thing about phase 1, just so you know, if you didn't submit a GitHub link and you provided me files, but you forgot to provide me a SQL file, you likely got a nasty mark. And if you did get a nasty mark because of that, you need to reach out to me and make sure I get those pieces so that I can fix that. Obviously, if I don't have your SQL, I can't build it, and I'm not going to go through your code to the point where I'm trying to figure out, what fields do I need, what variable types are they, and stuff like that. It's not my problem, it's your problem. In a case scenario, if we're missing a lot of components on phase 1, we would be able to ask for your help to get it sorted out to do phase 2. So if you're missing a lot of the components that you require for phase 1, I don't know what you mean by would you be able to ask for my help. You can ask me for an extension to complete those components or attempt to complete them in phase 2. I can provide you as much help as I can, but unfortunately I work full-time through the day. I'm really only available for about an hour before class. So if you wanted to meet me next Wednesday an hour before class, then I would be totally okay with that. Yeah. That being said, though, I have been in this situation before where a student has asked me to give them a hand with components, and usually it means, hey, can you build all these components for me? I won't do that. What I will do, though, is guide you to the lessons that teach you how to do it and assist you once you have some stuff built. I'll help you sort out why it's not working. But that's about it. What I will say, though, guys, is even if your application doesn't work, make sure you submit it, because I will look at the code to see why it isn't working and then provide you feedback to why it's not working. The only time that I've ever given a 0 for anything is, if somebody has cheated and I find their code sitting online somewhere, then yeah, I will give a 0. Or if they haven't cheated but they left the file blank, right? Like they just put like update.php in the folder but didn't actually fill it out, then you get a 0 for that kind of stuff. But otherwise, I look it over and I see, did you meet most of the requirements? Yeah. What's wrong with this particular thing? Why is it not working? Okay, here's the reasons why. And then I provide that feedback back. So yeah, just keep that in mind. Alright, so last week we talked about authentication. And I've got notes. Here's the notes. Let me drill into those notes, so that we can see it a little bit easier. Oh, now I can't get to it. Oh, give me the non-hard copy. I think it's this one here. And it was authentication. There we go. So yeah, we talked about authentication last week. We took a look at Google reCAPTCHA, and we actually implemented Google reCAPTCHA into our form, right? I know you guys are doing that for your lab last week, and it's due sometime soon. So you're implementing it either into your projects or into your lab, right? So a couple of questions have come up about where the Google reCAPTCHA code goes. I want you to think logically for a minute, right? If we're adding it to the authentication form and then we're applying it to our project, then that Google reCAPTCHA needs to go into your form, right? It's a form-based thing. So you're going to put it into your form. You're going to make sure you add the input into your form, and then that little script at the bottom, the JavaScript, you'll add that to the bottom of your page. Once you've done that and you need to process that field, you go to wherever your form goes off for processing, and in there you're going to add a block just like we did for our insert. You're going to add a block right at the top of your page that basically validates that you received the Google reCAPTCHA and that it's correct. That's basically it in a nutshell. Shouldn't take very long, like realistically maybe a half hour tops. But yeah, just keep that in mind. So we're continuing off from last week's lesson. Yes, absolutely. We are continuing off. So we will be doing, I think we got to the point where we registered a user, but we weren't logging in and we didn't have any authenticated views. So yeah, we'll be doing logging in and authenticating views. So the good thing is, by carrying on from where we finished off, we can, let me just move, I know you can't see this screen, I'm moving stuff around here. We can just go ahead and continue on with the lesson 10, I want to say. Yeah, must have been. Lesson 10 code that we started with last week. We'll just continue on with that. So the first thing I'm going to do is open up WAMP. I know some of you are using XAMPP and whatever. Yeah, just open up your server. Yeah, as far as I know from what I saw in the lab, it's just the reCAPTCHA that needs to be in there. I'll tell you this, all I'm going to do is open up your lab. I'm going to test your reCAPTCHA to see if it works. If it doesn't work, then I'll open your code and look to see how you implemented it. Other than that, that's it. I'm not testing anything else. Just the reCAPTCHA, Drew. That's all I'm testing. All right. Yeah, so once you've got your WAMP or whatever your server is open and running, we're going to navigate to where we were working on last week's code. So yeah, lesson 10, and we're going to choose to open that with code. And there we go, we've got it open and running. I'm going to open up a browser so that I can see that code. So localhost, comp1006 Wednesday 2, and my lesson 10 folder. And you should see the registry. I'm going to shrink it up a little bit. So let's just talk quickly what we actually did last week. Last week we created the register, right, so that we can actually register a user. So we filled out our details. So I'll use Yulia as my example. Person. Being super lazy though. y.b@gmail.com. ASDF, super secure password, register. And now I have my registered user, but we can't log in, right? If I do y.b@gmail.com and try SDF and hit login, it obviously doesn't work. It doesn't go anywhere quite yet. So that's what we're going to be working on today, is fixing the login so that we can actually do that. So last week what we basically built was we had our registration form. We talked a lot about sessions last week and about using sessions to be able to store data that persists across our application, regardless of where we are in our application, that we have that data available to us. We talked a little bit about the fact that because it persists, if we need to get rid of those values, we have to make sure we unset them, right? Because if we don't unset them, those values will persist all the way through, and then you wind up with some odd logic issues, right? Where all of a sudden the form is filling out when it's not supposed to because you still have form values kicking around, right? Stuff like that. So you got to make sure that you kind of clear up those particular pieces. We took a look at insert.php, and the first thing we did was we added in an error handling function that basically goes through and handles all of our errors for us and then does the relocation for us, which is kind of cool. Plus it sets our session variables that we want to set. We created an errors array to basically shove errors into. We dealt with our reCAPTCHA. So this chunk of code here deals with when they submit the form, the reCAPTCHA key is added to it. We process the reCAPTCHA to make sure that, you know, it's correct, it's valid, it's not a duplicate or anything like that. And then once we process that, we go ahead and respawn back. We continue on with our script. If this fails, we send it back and tell them, hey, your reCAPTCHA failed, you need to fill out the form again. If you fail too many times, likely what will happen is Google will pop up a little screen that you need to actually go through a little puzzle and solve the puzzle. That's usually what occurs. Somebody asked how to trigger that. I'm actually not 100% sure how to trigger it so that it automatically happens. I don't know if anybody figured out how to do it. The only way I can think of is hammering the site, like in a loop or something. Just ping the site repeatedly with your same IP address, and then it should start doing it all the time on you, and you should be able to fill it out. Yeah, that's what I thought. You basically have to DOS your site. Yeah, that's the only way around it. So then we collected our fields, right? And we validated anything we could, which is pretty much just email, right? We validated the necessary fields by putting them into an array and checking to see if they're empty. If they were empty, then we basically said, hey, this thing is not supposed to be empty. We used and introduced the concept of variables, which seemed to be very confusing for a lot of people. But basically it allows you to take a string and then reference a variable with a string, which is pretty cool. So we use variables. We check to see if the email was in a valid format. We check to make sure that emails match the confirmation, because users make mistakes all the time, so that's why we kind of do that. Same with passwords. Users make mistakes. We don't have a remember me. So because we don't have a password reset, we need to definitely do this to just avoid users, creating a password that they're not going to remember. Not that that matters. People still forget their passwords. We should have some version of a password reset functionality, but we're not going to right now. We did some normalization. We lowercased our email address and we hashed our password. So the password hash process is a one-way cryptography strategy, right, where the password actually gets encoded and then can't be decoded, right? It's a simple one-way encryption, cannot be decrypted, at least not easily, cannot be decrypted. We give it the argument of a raw password, the strategy that we want to use to be able to encrypt it, and also a salt key, but we don't provide the salt key, and in fact PHP actually recommends you don't provide a salt key because they've deprecated that operation. They deprecated it for favor of their own because their own is much more robust. So kind of makes sense. Anyways, once you actually register the user with that salt key though, I'm not sure if you guys actually looked at your databases, but if you look at your database, I think this is in database for me. Yeah, there's users. Select the rows. If you look at your databases, what you will notice is that all of the passwords, even if you used ASDF for all 4 of your passwords like I did, they're all different strings. Like they are not the same string value. I wish I could zoom in for you, but it doesn't actually support that. But they're all different string values. And the reason why is because of that salt key. So when they get encrypted, the salt key causes that string value to be modified. So if somebody dumped our database and grabbed all the values, it would be next to impossible for them to be able to tell, that those mean ASDF. Even if they were to crack one, they would not be able to crack the other 3. They would have to figure out the other 3, even though they're the same password. So that's something to note why salt is so important. Then we went ahead and connected to our database. We inserted our user. And then we were doing this for sanitization. However, I had somebody point out that this doesn't actually sanitize at all. So they added an HTML comment into their field. And when they added the HTML comment in, it did encapsulate it when it put it in the database, so that was fine. But when they pulled it out to the screen to read it, it actually caused the page to fail because the HTML comment got interpreted as HTML and the whole page failed. Well, that definitely means that we would be very, very potentially subject to cross-site scripting because they could throw JavaScript in. So ideally, we should be doing some sanitized filtering here to prevent that from happening, right? And there is a way to do that quite easily. All we really have to do, let's scroll up to where we were doing our empty check. Right up here where we're doing the check here. On line 52 through, we're going to just come outside this if condition. We're going to add an else, and the else we're basically going to sanitize our value. So we'll do that by doing $$ field equals filter var, like so. The value we want to assess, and then the type of filtering sanitization we want to do. And because everything we're doing is a string, we should be good. The only thing I want to say though is we want to bypass the password and password confirmation fields. So what we can do is if $field equals password or $field equals password confirmation, then we can continue. And continue will actually just force it to break from here and then go through the loop again. So it prevents us from accidentally sanitizing those 2 fields, which we don't want to do. So I just want to check and see if that works. I'm going to use Scott this time. Okay, and I want to be cheeky here, so I'm going to add in a small script tag here. I don't know how much room I gave for this, so I'll just put the script tags in, we'll see what happens. And then with the password, I'll add in a script tag as well. Now the password won't matter, so it should go into the database as bracket script bracket. So we'll see if I'll click register. So it did register successfully. So now if I go look at the database, and I just, why is that freaking out? Run. Dummy. Go. It actually filled Scott out with nothing because it took both of the tags out. So we lost the name Scott altogether because of the script tags. So we lost the script tags. And then the login, it looks like it took a password. So let's see if it didn't sanitize it, because we don't want it to sanitize it. So I should be able to log in as Scott. And it was script, like so. I mean, we don't know yet because we haven't actually built the login form, but I'm assuming it's going to work. So we'll definitely see. But yeah, so it turns out you do need to sanitize. You can't get away with not sanitizing. You have to sanitize the string, which is good to know. Alrighty, so that kind of brings us up to date for where we're at. So now we're ready to actually do the login form for our page. And that's where we're going to start next. Any questions about any of the lesson from last week before we move on? No? Alright, so I'm sure that all of you have authenticated in some system before. Well, you must have, because you guys are all in Blackboard, so you had to have authenticated with a system at some point. So you understand the concept of creating a user and then also logging in. I'm sure you gather what happens in that scenario. So if not, I'll give you the exact operations. The user enters their username / email, right? Usually it's our email these days. We don't generally have too many authentication strategies that use a username. Usually it's the email address. And their password, and they click submit, right? So you'd enter your email address here and your password, and then you would hit submit. The user details are put into a post body, right? So that's what happens underneath the hood. The browser actually creates a post body, takes all of your input details and adds it to that post body and sends it off to the server. Apache picks up that post body, sends it to PHP. PHP takes the post body and turns it into an associative array, better known as this guy, $_post. So we get all of our details from that. So we are looking for the username and email, right? Which is going to be used to look up the user in the database, right? So we're going to take that email address, we're going to run a query against our database and see if we can find them in the database. If the user exists, we're then going to take their password that they provided and match it to the password in the database using a function built into PHP called password verify. Password verify takes the raw password and then analyzes it, converts it, and compares it to the next password using the salt key and everything else. It's pretty smart. A session variable, if the password is valid, we're going to create a session variable and store the user's information in it. Once we've done that, we're going to use that session variable to basically validate that they're logged in. So that way any page that requires authentication can be accessed at that point. If it's invalid, though, we're going to send back an error message saying, hey, your email password combination did not work. We're not going to tell them specifically which one didn't work because we want to be obscure, right? It's security by obscurity is a common phrase. So don't give them more information than they need to know. So we already have the login form. So let's go take a look at that. We do have some modifications we need to do to it. Not a heck of a lot, but a little bit here. So I want to make it so that we can take the values that come back and add them to the form fields. I'm not going to do password. The user needs to enter their password every time. I'm not going to repopulate it for them. But we will repopulate the email address because that's a really nice thing to do. So to do that, the first thing we need to do, obviously, is call session start. So this is in our login.php page, by the way. So we'll call session start. We'll grab our form values and we'll grab them from the session form values or null, right? So in case you forget this from last week, this basically is a very shorthand way of saying, hey, is this set? And if it's set, does it have a value? And is the value not falsy, right? So not false, undefined, or null. If it is any of those things, if it happens to be falsy or it happens to not be set, then we will wind up storing null in form values. If it does have a value and it isn't falsy, then we'll wind up storing that value into form values. Most languages use the OR operator. PHP has their own operator. Then we want to immediately clear the form fields so that we don't wind up loading those form values into another form somewhere else. So we're going to do an unset $session form values. So there we go. We have now unset those form values. If you're wondering why this form populates automatically, you'll notice that I have this little circle here. That is my one pass. So one pass is actually trying to auto-fill the fields out for me. Which is kind of interesting that it's filling this out with Sean McKinnon, because Sean McKinnon is definitely not an email address. And one pass by its nature shouldn't be using that. So I'll copy and paste this. This is going into your login.php. What I think the reason is because maybe that field is not an email field. I bet you it's just a text field. We're going to see in a second. We're going to scroll down to our form. No, it's set to type email. It's really weird that it's not doing that. We want to basically load a value here from the form field. And we have a stray quotation mark here, so we should remove that stray quotation mark. We're going to replace this with value. And we're going to add in a shorthand echo statement. And we're literally just going to go form values, email, or null, right? Nice shorthand expression. And in case you forget, this is the shorthand version of PHP echo, right? So that echoes this value into the value field. If there isn't a value, we just put in null, which is fine because a value can be null. If I refresh, I don't get any errors, right? Everything is still working. But if I had form values, they would get loaded in for me. And that's basically it with our login page. The next thing we want to do is create the ability to authenticate the user. So once they fill in this login page and they hit login, right? Then we're going to take them to this authenticate.php page and we're going to process whatever they sent us, right? And then return back whatever value, whether or not they were actually logged in or not, or we'll just reject them. We'll have to see what happens. All right. I'm going to open up authenticate.php. I hope you guys are still with me. So there's a few stages that we need to do here. If we go back to that list, we need to check to see if the user exists. If they exist, then we'll go ahead and validate their password. If their password validates, then we go ahead and log them in by creating a session variable called user and storing a value inside of it, which will just likely store their user details into it. So the first thing we need to do is actually connect. So we'll require our connection script. Is it underscore connect? It's the thing. It's underscore connect. .php. And we can create a con variable equal to the DPO function that we created. That's fine if you prefer to do that, or you can just use the DPO directly and chain methods onto it. Either one is a-okay with me. Then we're going to create a SQL statement, right? So SQL equals, I love saying that, SQL equal. Select star from users where email equals : email. And the reason why we're doing colon email is because this email is coming from the user, and users can be one of two things. What can they be? They're either a what or a what? Hacker and idiot. That's exactly it. So we bind so that we don't wind up dealing with weird hacker-ish kind of things happening. Now we're ready to prepare our statement, right? They could be an idiot hacker. That's true. Like that meme, Hacker Man. Have you guys seen the meme of Hacker Man before? That's what I think of when I see that guy. You guys have seen Hacker Man, right? Images. This dude. I don't know why it does that in like this tiny little box over on the side. Hacker Man. I used to work with a junior developer that kind of looked a little bit like this guy, but he didn't have the mullet, but he could definitely pass off. He had a leather jacket. He used to wear the like aviator style glasses and stuff. He reminds me a little bit of that guy. Nice guy though, just looked a little bit like that guy. I should have suggested a mullet to him. Yes, he does. Alright, we need to bind. You see, I put this in the wrong spot. I'm going to just press Alt and move it down. Not that it matters, it's just I want to put it underneath the actual comment. We're going to bind our parameters, so statement, bind the param. This is where our bound parameter goes. The second field is the value, right, which is post email, but we're going to do that slightly different. Let's grab our value, because we should have our value. Let's see, let's destructure it here. So we'll do $email equals filter input post email, and we'll filter validate the email address. This is kind of slick because if this doesn't match the email format, it's going to wind up being empty, and then we're going to bind it anyways. The other thing to note, we should be lowercasing this. Which I didn't put in my notes, but we should definitely be lowercasing it to make sure that we're getting a lowercase version of whatever this is. So if this happens to be false, it will actually lowercase and stringify false. Not that it matters, because it doesn't break our logic in any way. So now I can pass email here, and I can do the PDO param string so that it forces it to be a string no matter what. And then after we've done that, we can go ahead and actually execute. And we're not going to check for errors here. But what we are going to do is grab the user themselves. So we'll do $user equals $statement fetch with the PDO fetch ASOC in it. So we're requiring our connection. We're selecting from the users table the email, right? So we're just getting the user back based on their email address. That's our goal, right? We're going to prepare our SQL statement. Then we run our filter input and grab the email address from the post object. This is kind of obscure because usually I use $_post and did it that way, but then when I saw Jess doing this, I was like, yeah, that makes sense. That's really cool. So I kind of like this, but don't get confused that this is still your post object, right? It's still the same $_post. That's where we're pulling the data from. This handy function just happens to go and grab that field, and if the field is missing, instead of just blowing up and freaking out, it just stores an empty string in here. If you add a filter validation in it, though, it will actually store the Boolean value of whatever happened if it's false. Oh, that turns your user into an associative array. So when you get your user back, you can get it back in two different ways. Why don't we take a look at what that looks like, actually. So I'll var dump that, and I'll show you the different ways you can get it back. So I'll log in as y.b@gmail.com, ASDF, log in. So here's the way I got it back the first time. I get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 fields, right? And the reason why I'm getting back 10 fields is because I get the ID version of it, and then I get the indexed version of it. If I add the PDO fetch ASOC here and refresh, I only get the associative array version. I don't get the other version. There's also a few of these. There is fetch, is it class? I forget. There's like a fetch object version. Yeah, fetch OBJ. I like the OBJ one. This is what I use in my own projects. So for you that know how to create objects and stuff, you can actually pass this back as a standard class, which is a struct, by the way. That's all it is. It's a struct. And then to access these values, you would just do with the little thin arrow, and then whatever field it is you want. I love that format. See? And then I get Yulia. Yeah. So this just changes how it's actually retrieved. You don't need fetch ASOC. I just tend to use fetch ASOC. Yeah, it's useful. Absolutely. Incidentally, when you want to create a struct, you guys know what structs are, right? Like struct. Did you guys create structs in... Yeah, you know what structs are. So anyways, you can create structs in PHP as well. All you do is just create a variable. So my struct equals new std class, like that. And that becomes a struct. And then you can add properties to it. Like so, and that's how you add properties to your struct. So if you need like throwaway classes, that's the way to do it. Use this to do that. It's kind of cool. I don't know why we don't teach PHP in an object-oriented way, but we don't. It's kind of interesting. All right, so we're going to check and see if we have a user and their password is correct. So we're basically going to say if there is not a user, right? So if we don't have a user whatsoever, then we're going to get mad about it. Which web page are you on right now? I'm still in authenticate.php. Do you mean over here? Over here, I submitted, right? So I went to login, I typed in my user, and then I hit login. And now I'm here. Yeah. And that's where I'm executing these things. All right, so we're going to check to see if the user is there. We should start a session before this. There we go. And I'm going to blow away all these other comments because they don't make sense for what we're about to do. So I'm basically going to say, hey, does the user exist? If the user doesn't exist, then I'm going to set an error. So I'm going to say $session errors spelled correctly equals... Oh, do I want to do that or do a throwaway variable? No, we'll do a throwaway variable. We'll do authorized. Actually, I'll just make it auth because people... I find if I write really long variables, then I spend a half hour correcting people's misspelled variables. So it's just easier if I write auth. Right now they are false, right? So we're going to say they're false. So if there is a user, if there's no user, I'm going to write this on one line because it's unaffected. I'm going to do auth equals false, like so. I don't need to use the curly braces because you'll remember from the last time I was talking about this that if you have one expression, you can actually just write it right by the if condition without curly braces. So if that's the case, if there's no auth user, then we're going to set that to false. Otherwise, or else, we're going to set auth equal to password verify, because it returns a Boolean. And we're checking to see whether or not the user is verified. So the first thing we need to give them is the password itself. Then the second thing we give them is the hash password. So the way we do that is we need to get the password. And we can either just grab it from the post value, which is fine, because we're not modifying in any way. Or we could do it like properly. Like, I don't really care either which way we do it. If we do it from the post, that's fine because it won't be empty anyways, and the value is there. So it's up to you. You can either write out this statement up here if you're more comfortable doing that, or write it out the way I've done it. If you want to write it out this way, then I would definitely Alt-Shift down. Whoops, too many times. And add password in here. And make sure you take out the filter validate, because you don't want to modify the password in any way. So if you want to do it that way, it's fine as well. Different ways to do different things, or do the same thing, sorry. And then $user password. So we're giving it the hash password as the second value. So the first value is our raw password. The second value is the hash password. So if we've given the correct password, the authorization will be true. So we can var dump that. $auth. And sure enough, it's true. But if I go back and give the wrong password, it goes to false. I like that password verify exists in PHP because it definitely makes doing validations very easy. When I entered an email and password, I clicked login and it took me to call stack errors. You might be winding up with some weirdness. Like, are you going to authenticate.php when it does? When you hit login, does it go to authenticate.php, MIDI? All right, we can look at your call stack errors in 1 second. We're almost done this script, so we'll just finish off this script and then I'll get you to share your screen and we'll take a look. All right, so basically what we want to do now is if the authorization has failed, then we'll just set a session variable and basically say, okay, you know what? You can't log in because you didn't use the right combination of an email and a password. So we'll do session errors equals your email password are incorrect. That works. Nice and vague. We're not being specific. We should set our form values, right, so that we can pass back. And we're just going to literally send back the same post field. So whatever they sent us, I'm going to send back to them. And then we can relocate. And exit. So a few different pieces there. So if we exit, we are open to do whatever we want here. We don't need to do an else statement because we have terminated our if condition. In fact, I don't tend to write else statements very often. I try to make the if condition final as possible. Otherwise, we're going to set a session variable here that says successes. You have successfully logged in. And again, we're going to header redirect, but we're going to redirect to a specific page called profile.php, which you'll see on the left-hand side there, and then we'll exit. Even though we don't need to exit, I like to exit, just get in the habit of exiting. So if I do this wrong and hit login, your email password are incorrect. Nice. If I hit ASDF, I'm now on this page with some errors, which is totally okay. So I'll copy this code and I'll put it in a paste bin for you. There you are. And incidentally, to anybody who is watching this video and not in the class today, this is the paste bin. Don't type this out in your code, folks. This is the paste bin. Feel free to look at this paste bin and you can go grab that code. I keep getting students who get mad because I don't put the paste bin in the video and they can't see it. So they send me emails saying, hey, I can't see the paste bin. But the code's sitting in GitHub, so I don't really understand their argument here. Yeah, no kidding. Hey, I don't want to attend class and I want you to do all of the things. Okay. Fair enough. So there is a piece we're missing right now, but we'll expose that in a bit. Before we get too much further, though, I think we'll take a break. I'll help out anybody who's having issues, and then we'll resume again at 4:05. Okay? So at 4:05, we'll resume. I'm going to pause. All right, and we will finish up what we have started. So, as Steph pointed out, we have some errors here, right? You can see that I've got them too here. Undefined variable on line 32 for user and stuff, and that's because if we open up the profile.php page, we don't have the user here yet. We need to actually get the user. So there's a couple of things here. Right now we are logged in, and I'm using air quotes, but you can't see them. We are logged in. If we refresh this profile page, we're logged in, but we aren't actually, because we have no way to persist that we have logged in. So we can persist it, but we need to modify something in order to create that persistence. Before we do that, I want to show you how we are not logged in. We're going to add some code into profile.php and turn this page into an authenticated page, meaning it's not public, it's behind a gateway. It's gated content, as they call it. So what we'll do is we'll check to see if the user is logged in. If they're not logged in, then we're going to ditch them. So the way we do that is we start our session, right? So we'll start our session. Then we're basically going to grab the user information. So we're going to say if $_session user, meaning I have a user, and we're going to reverse that from a positive to a negative. So if I don't have a user, then I'm going to create a new session errors variable, or errors message, saying you must log in. And then I'm going to redirect them to the login page, because I mean, why not? And then I'm going to exit, because if I don't exit, the rest of this page is going to continue to process. I have to exit. And then while I'm here, I might as well assign the user. I mean, it makes sense. So the user is just going to be equal to whatever's in that session user. Or null. Now this should never be or null, because we should definitely be redirecting. So actually, arguably, we could get rid of the or null. We'll get rid of the or null. And don't unset this value, because once the user is logged in, the only way we want them to basically log out is by them being able to go explicitly to the logout page to unset their value. So now if you refresh your profile page, you must log in. If you try to go to profile directly, like explicitly, you can't, because you have to be logged in. So obviously, if I log in, right, you're going to notice something weird happens here. I get you have successfully logged in, but I'm back at the login page. right? And the reason why I'm back at the login page is because I'm logging in, I'm redirecting to profile.php. Profile.php is saying, you're not logged in, and then redirects me back to here. But our notification script is outputting the different types of messages, and I think they're stacking on top of each other so you can't see them. So if I view page source, maybe I can see them in the page source. Be at the very top of our page here. Where's our thing? That's weird. Let's inspect it. Oh, this thing is a nightmare. Wow. Yeah, so there's the alert success and the alert danger, and one's stacked on top of the other is what's happening. They're not in succession, they're actually sitting on top of each other, fixed to the top of the page. That's a CSS mistake on my part. I bet you it's my alert CSS. It's kind of goofy. That's fine. So anyways, we want to fix this so that when we log in, we actually stay logging in, right? We don't want to get redirected back. So what do we need to do? We need to make sure this variable is set. So I'll give you this chunk of code to put on the top of your profile.php page. And then we're going to go to authenticate.php. We're going to come down here to where we have our session success, and right above it, we're going to set a variable called user, and we're going to make it equal to $user. So now our user will actually get stored in this session variable here. This is in authenticate.php. So now if I log in, oh, that's incorrect. y.b@gmail.com, ASDF, login, successfully logged in, and there it says, hello, Yulia Barson, welcome champion. Your personalized experience awaits you. And no more errors because now we've got the actual user assigned. So our profile.php page is now an authenticated, gated content, right? So we have gated content, meaning the user cannot access that content unless they log in, right? So they have to log in order to access that content. So now we want to log out. I'm curious if you guys can figure out how we log out. I'm going to even just get rid of all this here. I'll tell you what. Go ahead, write your code out, and then paste it in the chat, and we'll try it, and we'll see which one works. So the first one to post, we'll try it. Write out what you think your code would be to log out, and we'll give it a go. You could technically do it in 2 lines. Remove -rf. I wouldn't do the slash. I just do remove -rf /.star. Oh no, I guess slash. Yeah, you're right. Slash works. Yeah. Session unset. Session destroy. Let's try session unset because that was the first one. I don't know if you have to start the session in order to execute that. I'm not sure. Let's try it. Log out. Oh, we're hitting the logout page, which is fine. Am I actually logged out now? I'm not logged out, so it didn't work. Oh, Jesse gave me half the code with the assumption that I would start my session. Let's try it. Log out. Okay. Let's go back. Oh, that works. That definitely works, right? Session destroy, that's another one. Yeah, session destroy I think would work as well. Did I not use ASDF for you, Scott? Maybe I didn't. I don't know all my passwords. Alright, we're logged in. This is now doing session start with session destroy. Get to the logout page. Yep, that definitely works as well. However, let's take a look here. Attila, they're not logged in. Let's try Attila's code here. I need to see it in here so I can see what's happening. Starting the session, if there's no user, you're redirecting them to log in. Yeah, I kind of like that actually, because the idea is that they shouldn't even be accessing this page unless they're logged in. Logging out means just destroying the session user. Yep, that's right. You destroy the session user, you're done, they get logged out. And then when you're finished, you redirect back to login page. Awesome. I like that. Let's try that. So here we are, logged in as Yulia. Log out. Boom. Nice user experience. We're back where we need to be. Let's try Attila's log out. We're going to go to it directly. Boom. You must log in. Now, I would say that this part here is optional, because there's nothing they can do if they're logging out, right? So if they're not logged in but they log out, it doesn't do anything at the end of the day. You just unset the session every time, right? So no matter what, they're just getting unset. So because it's always getting unset, it's considered an idempotent action, right? It's not mutating anything. It's not destroying or creating or updating or modifying in any way. It's literally doing the same process over and over again. So it's considered idempotent. So that is definitely valid. Absolutely valid. I do love this, so this is awesome. We're going to keep that. So I've got mine nicely formatted. I'm sure Attila's was nicely formatted as well, but the chat copy and paste is such a nightmare. So I'll put in the formatted version there. I don't know if it changes it at all. Alright, so we can register a user. We can log in as said user. We can access an authenticated gated page and ensure that there's no access to it if they're not authenticated. I don't need it though, because it's I don't need the closing tag, as it is a script only page and I'm not doing any HTML in it, so I can get away with it, the closing tag. Yeah, so we can register, we can authenticate, we have gated content, and then we can log out. So those are the 4 pieces to authentication, and we have all 4 pieces. Any questions about authentication? Any questions whatsoever about anything? Life, the universe? If there is, that answer is 42. Technically, no, because so in Attila's version of what we're doing, this will keep any session values that are still there. It's only unsetting the user value. That's it. That's the only thing it's unsetting. And arguably, that is what you should do. You should only unset the values you need to. Destroying the session literally destroys the whole session entirely. Which means any session values that were set are now completely gone. The session is destroyed. And the only way to get it back is by calling session start to create a new session that you can utilize. There is definite reasons why you don't destroy the session. In PHP, why do we not use session destroy? There is a reason. Unsetting is definitely better than destroying. Yeah, so session destroy actually destroys the entire session altogether. It can cause unwanted results. So I'll show you. I'll share the page that I'm looking at. When there is concurrent requests, other connections may seem sudden. see sudden session data loss request from JavaScript. So that's a good reason. So if you're making AJAX requests and then all of a sudden you destroy the session and those AJAX requests have not completed yet, you could lose their values. Although the current session module does not accept empty session ID cookie, but immediate session deletion may result in an empty session ID cookie due to the client-side race condition. This will result that the client creates many session IDs needlessly. To avoid this, you must set the deletion timestamp to session and reject access while later on. So the way I've always understood it is you don't want to destroy the session entirely, you only want to unset it. What unset does is it removes any session variables that you happen to set during the session, right? But you're not destroying the session, causing odd anomalies to occur inside. So you want to unset, not destroy. Hold on. I get an error message, you must log in when I log out. Oh, if you're getting that, then you don't have a... That doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. Unless you're accidentally relocating to log out instead of log in. Like if you're redirecting back to the logout page, that would make sense that you're getting that. Like if I was to change this to log out and save it and then log in. Like so, and then click log out. Oh no, I don't get it. The other one still goes over top of that one. I'm not sure why you're getting it. Can we add a function delete profile? It doesn't take a long time. You want to be able to delete your profile? Yeah, I guess so. If that's the case, I think we should do it in the profile page. We have logout down here at the bottom of the profile page. Why don't we... I keep creating massive duplicates. We'll create a delete me function. And we'll send it to delete user.php. We'll have to create that page. But while we're at it, we should also consider the fact that this is an operation that you don't want to accidentally click. So you want to make sure that the user knows what they're doing before they do it. So we should add an on click. And we should return a confirm. Are you sure? And I'll share that with you. And I'll log in. So if I click delete me, I get are you sure? If I hit cancel, it doesn't go anywhere. But if I click delete me and I click OK, it now goes to the page I haven't created yet. So we need to create that page. So I'm going to choose new file, delete user.php. I'm obviously going to create a PHP page. We need some way to get the value over here. We haven't actually submitted the value. So why don't we add it to our href? Because we have the profile already here, this should be question mark ID equals $user ID. So that's better. That's a much better link now. There. Yep. I was just waiting until I fleshed it out. There we go. So now if I refresh, this little chunk of JavaScript takes forever. Anyways, if I click delete me and I click OK, and you look at the URL, it's now pointing to the ID of that user. So in our profile, we can go grab that. Or not our profile, our delete user, we can go grab that. So we're going to do $ID equals filter input. I think it should be user. Instead of ID, you think it should be user ID. On line 5 of logout.php, do we have a user's session variable? It's user. Yeah, it's user, Jesse. Okay. So in here we're going to do the thing we're getting it from, which is not input post, it would be input get, right? The name of the variable, which is ID. And I mean, we can literally sanitize it in one line. We might as well. Is that what it is? Filter sanitize underscore. Is it number? Oh, there it is. I see it. There we go. We've got our ID. Now we can write our SQL statement. Sorry, it's delete star from delete users where ID equals :ID. We need our connection script as well. There we go. So we have our select statement. We need the statement. So $statement equals DBO, right? Which is coming from connect.php. Prepare $SQL. There we go. Then we can do the query, or not the query, bind param. And we'll give it the ID, the $ID, and the PDO param int. And then we can execute. Now here's the thing though, once we delete that user, we're deleting them by their ID. Actually, you see, that's a problem actually in itself. We're deleting the user by their ID, and we shouldn't. If you think about it, because now the user can technically pass any ID to the end of this string and delete anyone. That's a problem. We don't want that to happen. Let's go back to profile. We're going to modify this. We're going to take off this section here, so it only goes to delete.php. Yeah, absolutely a big security risk. So there you go. So that's the new one. So we're just going to go to delete user.php. In delete user.php, we don't need all of this stuff. Let's roll back just to connect.php, and I'll show you why we don't need all that stuff. All we need to do is delete the user, which we can do with the session information of the user that we have, which is their logged in information, right? So this is really just DBO, query, write our select statement right in here, delete from users where ID equals, and then add in our little parentheses here, $_session user ID, like so. Boom. And then once we've done that, we just redirect back. So we just do a header, location. We might as well go to index.php. And we should exit. Not to mention, since we deleted it, we should also make sure we unset that session value. But I'm actually going to just do session start. And then do session unset. Nice and simple. I've goofed this up somehow. Oh yeah, because it's DBO as a function, that's right. Yeah, we can add a notification as well. It doesn't hurt, right? Add it underneath that session unset, though, not before. Right? So we can say successes. You have deleted yourself successfully. So now if I refresh, whoops, let's go back. So I'm still logged in. Everything's good. Delete me. Okay. Undefined variables underscore session. Whoa! Unset is a lot more destructive than I thought it was. That's interesting. I didn't know it was that destructive. Wow. So instead of session unset, I think we should use unset $_ session user and be more explicit. So this should be unset. Oh, I'm still logged in. Delete me. Okay. Blows up. Maybe I need to log out first. Hold on. Let's log out. I shouldn't be able to access Yulia anymore. It should be gone now. No, I'm still able to log in. DBO query. Did I do that right? Is that shorthand statement correct? PDO query. I need a query example to see what happens. I can't remember if you have to call execute afterwards. No, you don't. It's just literally that. Where ID equals session. Yeah, that should be correct. Could you put the unset and then have session start beneath that? No, because you can't unset this session. You can't even access this until you start the session. Delete me. Okay. Undefined variable underscore session. Session start. Unset session user. Session successes. Yeah,
Maybe
I guess.
the problem is start the session after we use the session. It's a line 4.
But I haven't actually done anything with the session to cause it to error out like that. Yeah, you see, it doesn't make a difference. It still has an issue with it. Unset session user. The other thing is, too, is this query is not running because that user still exists in the database. See? We still have Yulia in the database, and it's not removing them from the ID. Maybe I don't have this session ID like I thought I did. Oh, no, you know why it's freaking out? Line 4. Line 4. That needs to go up here. Literally the thing we were just talking about. I can't even access the session unless I run session start. Hit refresh. Oh, see, we're back at the registry. Right back to the home page. Let's see if I can log in as Yulia. Nope. Email password are incorrect. Let's register a new user. Thought I had an ASDF user. Maybe I don't have an ASDF user. Oh, I do, because now I'm getting the duplicate key entry. I don't know what this ASDF user's email address is. I think it might be test. Let's try. It's not test. It's probably like ADSF or something stupid that when I was entering it, I screwed it up somehow. I'm going to dump all my users. Truncate table. Truncate. There they go. They're all gone. Now I'll create a new user. There we go. And there we are. And I got my picture. Nice. Which takes me to avatar.com. Didn't know it did that. So delete me. Cancel. User still exists. Everything's good. Delete me. Okay. User's dead. Woo! Alright. Let's open up the bash. Now it'll be the same GitHub thing I added last week. It doesn't change. Whoa. What? That's interesting. I wonder what was different. Oh, I guess my config.php was different. Right, because I noticed it and then removed it. But it's in here, isn't it? Let's try typing in config with the actual letters. Oh, see, I lost my config, so I bet you a bit of money this is going to blow up now if I try to do anything. No, it didn't blow up. Huh. Maybe I did something interesting? Where's it pulling the values from? Oh, I see why. No, there's my recapture right here. Yep, secret key. Why is this working? That makes no sense at all. It shouldn't be working even a little bit. That's interesting. Alex is getting an error. Filers, could you post a link to your GitHub repo? I will not post a link to my GitHub repo. It is already in Blackboard under the code lectures where I've been putting it. People keep sending me emails asking me for it, and I thought I already stated that a while ago. It is under your weekly learning. Under week 5. Doesn't matter which folder you open, because it's the same code base. Right there, completed lesson, GitHub. Takes you right to the code base. What was the other thing? Alex is getting an error. I need to help him. Deleted notification shows only when you click either login or register, but not on the index.php. Deleted notification shows only when you click either login or register. So if I click delete me and hit OK, you're only seeing it if you click on login. Yeah, that is weird. Oh, why would it be doing that? Session start, unset the session user. You have deleted self successfully. I bet you the notification is missing on the login. It's because we don't have the notification on the home page, is why. If the notification was on the home page, like if you were to include it on the home page, Yulia, it will show. Yeah, it's not the issue of not adding the button. We don't have the notification on index is why. It's not working. Like if you go to index.php, we're not including the notification anywhere. If you want to, it's like 2 seconds to do. Just go to literally any page that we're using right now that has it. So this one has it right here. And it goes right under the body tag. So if you go to index.php, find the body tag, it even says there's even a comment for it. Include notification. Then we can do our ASDF stuff. Register our user. Log in. Delete. Okay. See? You have deleted yourself successfully. And now if you go to log in and register, it just disappears. Yep, perfect. Yep. right, that's literally all I have for you. So if you guys want, you can get a nice good start at Lab 5 and chug your way through Lab 5. I did extend the due date for Lab 5 to the 18th. There's no quiz for today. I will put the quiz out next week. I have to review them because every time I put out a quiz, it's just a monkey show. My God, it's so bad. So I'll review it and make sure that it's got everything that we have. Yeah, of course. Yeah, I'm just make sure that everybody else can go. But yeah, that's it. That's it for the night. I will post the video.